Hello, this is Paul Milligan. Welcome to IC Show TV at IC 2018. Thank you for joining us for this panel discussion. This one is entitled, Could the IoT be a driver for AV technology going forward? Joining me today, I've got Kevin Madeja from Snelling, Danny Rogers from AVI SPL, and Christian Bozeat from Macom. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So, first question really is the sort of title one. Do you think IoT could be a driver? Kevin, I'll go to you first because you're nearest to me.
Yeah, no problem. I don't think it could be, it is.
Okay.
And it's how is it going to be?
Yeah.
This is really the question I've got in my mind. It's how we integrate this with, unified communications. We're now dealing with more IT-based technologies. We're dealing with network administrators, those types of things. And traditional AV has a hard time actually integrating with that.
Yeah.
So we kind of need to take lessons from what's happening in the Internet of Things, but also realize that it's not necessarily focused on the things that we need to do in the AV business.
Danny, is IoT something that you guys are involved with or investigating?
Yeah, very much. As a global organisation, it's absolutely fundamental and core to the whole offering. You still look at the whole platform. AV is still essential and it's still at the centre of everything we do. But the whole migration into IoT is fundamental. And just bringing up the previous point, when you actually look at what we're trying to achieve and where the value we're trying to add to IoT, with so many things now being available on a network, with so many analytics that are being derived, the value that we collectively bring is being able to disseminate that information and decide what's valuable back to the customer. So very much so, IoT is something we have to all embrace, we have to understand, but let's not write the epitaph on AV just yet, because it's still very much at the core of what we do.
Christian, you're very kind of progressive in terms of technology and stuff. I'm guessing IoT is something that's on your radar. And
Yeah,
has been for a
it
while.
has been. It is, as everybody said, it is something that's affecting. I think that there are challenges in the IoT and how it's affecting AV on it and anything in your life and a business. Importantly, it can't become a real driver until you decide what it is that you want to affect, why you want to affect it, how you're going to gather that information, what you're going to do with it once you've got it, and how you're going to utilize that. So there are a number of things that are a blocker at the moment to that from an AV perspective we can help, but you can't just go, well, it's an Internet of Things, yes, one size fits all, that's it, bang, slip that in there, it's going to function and everything joins up nicely together. Just isn't the case.
I mean, Danny, do you think the AV and traditional AV, if you want to call it that, I know you did, do you think it really understands what IoT is and what it represents?
No, it continues to not to understand it, and back to the previous point, you can almost have paralysis by analysis. You can overdo that. So the whole thing about affecting business outcomes is critical. It's understanding what the business drivers are. I've just recently done a presentation, on the whole collaboration piece, and we can overdo the whole piece from IoT. So it's about really understanding the value it brings to an organisation, and then making sure there's worth that goes alongside it, because we have consumer driving enterprise for one of the very early stages of our whole industry, where you have so good, whether it's your washing machine, whether it's your dishwasher, whether it's your lighting, people now, whether it's your webcam at home when you're away on holiday viewing around your house, watching your dog, so we can overdo it, but we have to understand, I think, corporate and enterprise business is at very, very early stages of this, and they need hand-holding through all of this.
And if you look at it from a home perspective, the tools aren't really even there in the home room. So everybody's saying, Amazon Alexa, okay, great, it's a good tool, it will be a good tool. It's not AI yet, it's a reporting tool. If you ask it how much energy you've used, it will probably tell you that an average male should use 2,500 calories a day. It's not specific enough. And then you've got to, if you look at from a home perspective, you've got to say, okay, well, I could get it to control my lights, but then I need to have all of these other pieces of hardware. Then I've got to do it, then I've got to set up myself. Is that worth my time and energy and effort? And that's the question that you have to ask the client of exactly. So those things are going to work together, but you have to have the time to understand what it is. Then you have to put them together and actually test and actually see whether it works before you can then start to roll it out. So we have a lab, the Macom lab, where we actually put these things to test and actually when we do the strategic piece, what do you want to do, why do you want to do it? Then we would take those pieces of hardware, connect them all up, stick them on the network, see what information we get out of them, see how it works, and see before we actually go and then roll that out to a client, we know what it's going to achieve.
Do you think the AV industry, the wider AV industry, understands IoT?
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, traditionally, what did we do? We built systems that were bespoke with custom hardware, whether they be HDMI matrices over specialist cabling, and we had specialist control systems, and that was all fine, and we know how to do that. Now we have to work over an enterprise network. We have to understand what that network can do, what its topology is, how it's designed, and then how IP-enabled devices work on that network. And we're dealing with a whole new, at least from the technical side, group of people.
Yeah, and those guys have, in an IT world, have a series of processes that they go to test their products.
They do, yeah.
Very few AV departments actually have a test department that's going to test all of their AV Internet of Things devices. Oh, it's a screen, just stick it on the network, it'll be fine. What happens when your end of life happens and it's not supported? A lot of the large companies that we're working with, they're like in a rabbit in the headlights at the moment, because these things are coming, but the infrastructure's there is not internally to be able to actually deploy them and test whether they're deployable. You've got other issues as well in the actual construction process. We were talking earlier about actually the construction process of building a building is a massive blocker, and it strangles innovation in that area because of you've got lots of different products being pulled together, or you need to have that, but nobody's doing a strategy. It's just, we've got a building, we've got to move, it's driven by program, get it in.
Yeah, that leads on to this whole idea about smart buildings. Yeah. You know, smart buildings is great to know that after 10 seconds the light turns off, but it's also the analytics about that. Who's using that building? How is it being deployed? How is it being utilized and consumed? And then ultimately that actually drives innovation, it drives usage throughout an organization, but those analytics are key. But what it's also driving from an AV world is actually driving more and more monitoring and management. So anything that's on the network, ironically, can be monitored and managed, and you can provide support services based on that intel. So,
you can.
Yeah.
The challenge is how many clients actually take their AV support seriously. So if you've got all these analytics, great. Who's going to analyze them? Yeah. Who's going to do anything with that? Well, and have you got enough people in your AV support team to actually be made to make any sense of it? Have you got a strategy, a global strategy to do it right?
What AV support team? They're all gone. They're all IT guys.
Danny, you work for one of the biggest guys in this game. Have you got the manpower to do that? I mean, if you
we have, and ironically, to that point, the outsourcing of that now. This is migrated from a capex of having deployment of staff to outsourcing that. And it's interesting. We talk about smart building, but the migration to that is going to be smart cities.
Yeah.
You know, let's not hang about here. You know, as much as we have to make sure that the platforms are in place, the support is in place. You know, there are people maybe within the construction industry that maybe not going at quite the same pace as the industry is going and where technology is going. So we have to be mindful of that. I come back to one point. That one point being is that do not throw the AV baby out with the bathwater, because that is still very much at the core. But we have to be mindful of the way that people are making decisions on technology in a building, not just for today, not for 3 years, but 5 years, 10, 15 years. And that's how so far some are looking at.
Exactly. And if they're looking at that, the most important thing, we come back to the first thing, is you've got to have a strategy. What is it? Absolutely. Why is it? If not now, when? How are you going to move from this point where you are now to where you want to be? Now, if you don't have somebody that's looking at the technology piece, and AV is a part of that, IT is a part of that, building management is a part of that, all of those things pulled together, where are you in each of one of those different things? You can go here, you've got room booking, you've got room management, you've got sensing, you've got screens and display. Each one of those needs a strategy within a business, and that then drives whether they're internet-enabled devices.
There's one other thing that goes alongside that, and that is we're seeing a desire now for a much, much more improved user adoption model. So no longer is it I'm going to work with a company, deploy their technology, and I'm going to do 2 weeks worth of training. It's now an ongoing program of user adoption, and it's sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's infinite. You're going to continue to use that program to make sure that that adoption program and process hits the level that they can prove demonstrable ROI, and then a usage in the organization that collaboration, IoT, is proving valuable to them as an organization. That's a subject matter at enterprises very much.
And it's not just about training, it's about process change.
Absolutely.
So if you want to go and deploy a room, collaboration space, great, it's a touch screen and it's got a camera on it. If you haven't changed your process of how the teams engage with that and work with that, and how then it's supported and how it's reported on, and all of those pieces have to be in place.
So where is the benefit in IoT to the AV community? Is it in the data and analytics, or is it in the control, or is it a mix of both?
It's all of it.
It's absolutely.
It's the whole thing. I mean, fundamentally, what are we really in the AV business? What are we good at? Right. We understand sources. We know about microphones, cameras. We know how to interface PCs. We know about displays. So destinations. We know about speakers and audio.
We know about network. We know about streaming.
We don't know. Well, we don't. See, the thing in the middle, we can do point-to-point streaming, right? We can get devices and encoders and put it on an IP switch, but deploy that on an enterprise switch when somebody else, that's the tricky bit.
It's getting
the
there.
tricky
It's on the way.
bit. The tricky bit is convincing two diverse organisations, the individuals in that organisation, to the IT manager and what was the comms manager or the AV manager, in bringing those harmonies and relationship, because that is actually the challenge.
Well, that's where the value add is.
Well, it is, and
for us.
I think that's brilliant, because a lot of what I do, 90% of my time is on strategy. And when we look at actually go into a client and we look at what they're doing within their business, part of that is your business isn't fit and isn't structured to allow you to take advantage of this. Because you've got this department dealing with this, you've got this department dealing with this, you've got these guys doing the service and support. They're not talking to each other, and so you're never going to leverage the power of what is possible until you've actually put your structure in order.
Which comes back to there isn't one size fits all. I completely agree with that comment. And what we're finding now is that consultancy is a lot about persona profiling. So, a solution for an IT department is different from a HR department, it's different from a sales, it's different from an operations department. So how does that IoT with the AV wrap on that, how does that fit together? Because it isn't the same for every business. And people have to understand that. You're not going to go into a major enterprise and you go, this is the technology solution, because it may not fit half of that business.
And when we talk about IoT, when we're talking about a corporate IoT, what we're actually talking about is things inside their network. Because what you're not going to be doing is sticking on an external network and having that information available outside anywhere else. So that's an important distinction to make about IoT. Yes, it's an internal Internet of Things within that particular space.
I agree.
I mean, what is IoT the sort of natural consequence of what we've seen in the last decade of everything migrating to the network? Kevin, is it a natural?
Yeah, well, certainly. I mean, everything is converging on IT infrastructure.
I mean, even in kind of education where they've...
Yeah, exactly. The thing that's been holding it up has been bandwidth. Right? So now we've got, 1 gig switches, 10 gig switches, switching meshes. So we don't have a bandwidth problem. We've also got increases in processing speed. So when we're talking about encoding and decoding software-wise, there's processors, and that hardware is there. So in terms of latency, how long it takes, that's shortened. So we've been talking for years about using IP, but it's now, everything is now coming in place. The only thing that is required now is to get the people sorted out. There's unified communications technologies, but there's also unified communications between people, and that is the hardest thing.
It is when you also look at someone like Amazon, for instance. The fact that you can track a parcel to within a meter of your house. You look at, when you think of things like Uber, you think about, we've got the Tesla car here, all those kind of things. Okay, that's one stage off of the traditional in the enterprise IoT, but that is within a matter of months, not years, commonplace to AI, to commonplace to IoT. We have to accept as an industry adopt that, embrace it, enjoy it, and be part of it. You cannot have these operating as silos because they're not silos anymore. It's coming together as a single platform.
Then the next progression from that is if you've got your strategy in place, you've got everything set up and you're working along that direction. You were talking about Uber, you can track your taxi there. Okay, well, people are starting to work differently in the way they do things. So if you've got that sort of stuff in place, the collaboration between different companies could start to really benefit from having those tools in place. And just like you were saying, you can track this, you can do that, you can track your parcel. Well, why can't that be available in other people? If you're selling those services, to another client, then they've actually got access to that. So, but if you don't have it in place, you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the strategy, you don't have the processes, you don't have those things, it's not going to get.
There's a human element to this, and that is wherever we go, wherever we talk in our industry, we all talk about millennials, and I'm a bit sick to death with it. It's not just millennials. There's us older folks. Surprise, surprise, I'm not. We're still hanging on to some. It's not just about millennials, but we completed a project with a major global organisation, and when we sat down with them, we didn't sit down and talk about technology. We sat down and said, what is your business outcome? And the business outcome is we're having a problem, a genuine problem, attracting talent, and then ultimately retaining talent. So what do you do from that aspect? Well, people of that generation want to operate and work the same way they operate or work at home.
Exactly.
So we have to understand that technology, way beyond just the AV world, is driving that IoT. And it's the same with M2M, in terms of machine to machine, in terms of understanding what all those are doing. Being networked is something we have to understand, we have to embrace. But as I said, we're not going away too soon from an AV world.
And there are still proprietary languages between some of these devices. Some of them are, you're still having to deal with those sorts of issues where, you've got open APIs, but there's still some businesses which are holding on to that and not letting that go. So you've got part of a solution can be and part of it can't be. And unless you've got a proper design for it and it's done and it's tied up together, you miss, there's still gaps. There's still going to be gaps.
I think you'll find as things develop that people that aren't using an open source, right, and providing interoperability are basically going to go out of business.
I agree.
Because it's not about that.
No.
Right?
It's almost back to you think of the old Polycom Cisco Timber, open standards or compatible. Well, what do they really mean?
It goes to the lowest common denominator and we'll work at that level.
Exactly. Those open APIs have to work, and people have to, and that's the modern world where you put out whatever you put out, and then people write to that. They create their own apps. They create, and that's the other thing that's relevant to a lot of business now. Making sure they have, even this event, we all get the app for it, and that's the way that we'll be driving that.
Brilliant, gents. Could talk to you all day, but I think we'll wrap things up. Cool, right. Many thanks for taking part, and join us again for another panel discussion. Thank you very much.